freedom and shit. So, I filmed another video that was, I was pretty triggered, so I didn't post it, and I'm not gonna post it. Because I think I was kind of angry and pissed because, of the virtue signaling that people are doing who are pro-mask against anti-mask. I mean, what is the stupid fucking tribalism on pro and anti-mask? So I want to do a more calm, because I've had some time to reflect and, I want to do a more calm reason why I am anti-mask. And I know that some of you are just, you tune out. Yelva, who's been a subscriber and a regular for quite a while, who works in a grocery store and has to deal with anti-mask assholes all day. And I admit, there are some people that are anti-mask and for not even the right reasons. And they are excessively, rude and aggressive and angry. But to be fair, there's just as many, pro-mask motherfuckers that are just as atrocious as human beings. People can be dicks, whether or not they fall on one side of the spectrum or the other. The problem with the mask thing, the mandate is it's
surprise, motherfucker.
It's forcing people who would otherwise probably not fuck with you to fuck with you, whether it's pro-mask or anti-mask. There's people who want to impose their views on other people. That's a constant thing. That's never been my goal, is being anti-mask. I just wish people didn't have blind faith in it, because there's plenty of studies, and you can Google this shit, but you got to stick to the pre-COVID stuff, because all the post-COVID stuff is biased and pushing an agenda, whereas pre-COVID, you got a more unbiased view of masks, and there's a lot of data from, the Spanish flu era, where they did mask up for that pandemic, and still it didn't stop the virus. And there's plenty of examples of doctors and nurses wearing masks that didn't stop from their patients from getting infected. I mean, I've even been infected by hospital-borne infection. It can stop some bacterial stuff, but unless it's a N95 or better mask, it does not really move the needle in terms of whether or not you'll get the virus. And we've seen that. We've seen it in nursing homes. We've seen it in, all over the place. There's been plenty of lockdown locations all across the globe that they masked up, they locked down, they did all of that, and they still had an overwhelming amount of infection and death. And the other thing to keep in mind is the death rate. You see, the media has been beating the infections to death. All these hotspot states, with their per capita death rates being still very low, comparatively speaking, to New York and New Jersey, which are both lockdown states. New York has a 166 as of July 30th per capita death rate. That's deaths per 100,000 associated with COVID. There's the other gray area. Ventilators. You don't have to look very far to see the mortality rate of people placed on ventilators. 80% was quoted by Cuomo. I've seen quotes as high as 90% of COVID-19 patients put on ventilators die. And when you bounce that against some of the other therapeutics, steroids, hydroxychloroquine, remdesivir, there's a lot of different treatments that have a better performance than the ventilator. There's ways to oxygenate without, you can put it in a chamber. There's the little oxygen they force in your nose to kind of like increase the oxygen level of the air you're taking in. There's a whole bunch of methods that are superior in terms of survivability to intubation. You're taking a big chance when you do that. You got to have a pretty strong, healthy person to intubate them. If they're not healthy and you intubate them, they're probably not going to make it. And that is why we saw such a huge death spike in New York State. A lot of people think it's because of the population. No, it was because of the treatment. The treatment is the biggest factor in mortality. The medical treatment, not, whether or not you got it. Most people get it and they don't get hospitalized and they don't, they don't end up dying. They just fucking don't. So, we've given up a lot of freedom. We've destroyed the economy. We are 100% for sure in a recession now. This is a recession. You're living in a recession. With a 31% drop in GDP. This is going to have real world devastating consequences. So when I'm talking about the masks, I'm also addressing social distancing and lockdowns and all of these things that we, first of all, as a free society, are absurd. It's causing a lot of collateral damage. There's going to be homelessness on an unprecedented scale. I'm already hearing rumblings of the evictions coming down the road. We don't have a replacement for the unemployment subsidy, which, a large percentage of Americans here, because I know some of you are overseas, a large percentage of Americans are losing that $600 a week subsidy. That's a lot of money. You can't even make that in a lot of jobs, $600 a week. The stimulus that was given out, which is supposed to stimulate the economy by people going out and just spending it on shit, a lot of people held on to that money so that they could eat and pay the rent and do the bills. So that didn't have the effect on GDP. And they're working on another package, but they haven't reached an agreement. And even if they do at this point, you're still going to go 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 weeks before people get that money in their hands again. And that is plenty of time, especially since we've been at this so long now, for people to completely fail financially. And the suffering is ridiculous. It's because of the fear. You see, the fear, which the mask is part of, by the way, the fear is crippling small business. All small businesses are suffering at an unprecedented rate. The bar I work at recently posted a survey and asked why people are, if you haven't gone to the bar, why haven't you? And I saw the comments on this. A lot of people are afraid of COVID. It wasn't the number one reason. Number one, a lot of people said that they did go. But they haven't reached capacity throughout this whole being open, and they're opening under limited hours, 50% capacity. Wear your mask when you're standing up. Take your mask off when you're sitting down. You know, you have to order food if you're going to drink. So, and there's a cover charge to get in to cover the costs of being open. Otherwise, it would be unsustainable with only a 50% limit on capacity. But even with that, they have not reached capacity. They're inviting walk-ins. And when you look at the comments to this, you know, people tend to be a little more direct with the excuses for not coming. Fear of the virus is huge. They got vulnerable people at home, so they're not going to take a chance and go out. And that's understandable. That's an understandable, legit concern. And if that was the only thing that to be concerned about, I don't think our economy would have took as large a hit. And I understand people aren't going to take chances with, you know, when they have exposure to vulnerable individuals. And you shouldn't. You know, and that's just, you know, even if there's no definitive proof on how the lethality of this virus, if you're unsure, erring on the side of caution is a thing. And that's the same thing with the masks. But here's the thing, you know, if you do your homework on the mask, you know, that's, you know, it's really not an effective thing. I mean, masks have an 80% fail rate for cloth masks. 80%. This has been tested pre-COVID. Plenty. The surgical masks, I believe, are 60-ish% fail rate in terms of infection. And N95, I think, is more in the 20% range. And, but if you combine full PPE with N95, as in you got the face shield and the gloves, it drops down below 10%. So honestly, the best way to protect people and yourself, more so yourself, you can protect yourself by wearing an N95 or better mask, having a face shield, and wearing surgical gloves, will protect you from the virus. For the most part, your chances of infection are very low if you do that, comparatively speaking, to the bra cap on your face. Or the bandana around your mouth. And, you know, one could argue, what's the feasibility of having the entire population wear face shields and masks and all of that? And what you really have to do is balance that not with the infection rate. The infection's going to spread. This virus is very contagious. It's going to continue to spread. But how we do our treatments and all of that, that is the factor in the mortality rate. And we are getting better at that. At the beginning, we didn't know what the fuck we were doing. We were venting everybody, and that led to a higher death rate. Now we have therapeutics that are being experimented with, one of which has also been shown effective, but they, due to a battle between remdesivir and hydroxychloroquine, these two drugs, hydroxychloroquine having been on the market for, what, 60 years, 37, something, I don't know, a long time, for other prevention of other infections, you know, including malaria. You know, very innocuous, very cheap drug, and now we got remdesivir is a direct competitor, so almost immediately in academia there was a battle of studies that happens often when you're talking about the profit of pharmaceutical industries, and remdesivir is winning. You know, you see how Trump has switched his stance on it. He was initially very supportive of hydroxychloroquine, and now remdesivir comes out in his speeches. And remdesivir is very expensive. I think one of you even posted it was like $4,000 for the treatment. Whereas hydroxychloroquine you can buy off like the shelf in some place. It's very cheap, comparatively speaking, and not profitable. So if you're going to make the population do something, I guess you want to make the population do something that's $4,000. Plus, remdesivir doesn't have the history of clinical testing that hydroxychloroquine does. So, you know, argue all you want. I know some of you are, you know, you don't want any kind of drugs, and I'm in that camp most of the time. But if I had to choose between getting vented and taking one of those drugs, I'm probably going to choose one of those drugs if I get to the point where I'm having trouble breathing because of COVID. Most people don't get to that point, and I'd like to think that I probably wouldn't if I got the disease. Like I said, I think I already had it in February. You guys were all witness to how sick I was back then. I, lost my voice. I was coughing up constantly, all kinds of shit. My fatigue level was insane. Like I even fell asleep at the keyboard at one time. And just overall, I was struggling, and I probably had a fever during that. I don't remember if I lost my sense of smell, but it was hard to pay attention to that when I was coughing so much and in so much miserable pain. So I don't really remember whether or not I lost my sense of smell during that. But that being said, this whole time I've been out here and I haven't been infected with the virus. Checking the per capita death rate for the United States, we're still in the 40s. We're at 46 out of every 100,000 people die from COVID. So now if we do the math on that, we can get a percentage chance, just being in the population, with our current level of treatment and infection rate. Infections have been going way up, but this has stayed fairly constant. It has ticked up by like 2 of 100. I think we were at 3. We were at 43 at one point. Now we're at 46 out of 100,000 people, which means, doing the math, and that's given all the states combined, and all, whether or not people are compliant or not compliant, or whether they're partying together on the beach, or whether they're locked down in their apartment in Walmart. Just to recap things, the most compliant state, New York, and I can say that because I've been there, is still at 166 deaths per 100,000. Whereas all of the hotspot states are in the 20s per 100,000, which makes it even lower percentage chance of death. Currently, your chance of dying in the United States, it'll vary from state to state, and I suggest you look this up. Your chance of dying currently in the United States, it depends on the state you're in, is currently 0.046% chance. 0.04% chance of dying from COVID-19 based on the per capita death rate, currently as of the end of July. That hasn't shifted hardly at all. Like I said, I think it went up like 2 or 3 1/100ths% in the past month. Yet we have implemented mandatory mask laws in multiple states out of fear because of the increased infection rate, that fear being driven primarily by the media. Yet your chance of dying from it is pretty much just as low as dying from anything else at this point, whether it's a car accident or cancer or heart disease. Actually, it's lower, way lower than their chance of dying of cancer or heart disease. Our level of fear has become ridiculous. And I'm starting to see, I'm on my way back to New York right now, and I can tell you that there is a disparity in terms of fear in the country. I drove through a small town. I don't remember the name of it, and I don't necessarily want to call them out because I know that they're currently violating their state's mandates. But there are towns out there that could give two shits, and they're fully open, and the masks are not enforced at all. There's even a story floating around of sheriffs will not, sheriffs being the primary police of small rural towns and areas, are not enforcing the mask mandates of their states. I drove into Wisconsin, which was able to open up due to a court decision. However, now has implemented a mask mandate, which went into effect the day I was driving through. I didn't stop in that state, so I can't tell you how compliant the population is in Wisconsin. Then I drove into Illinois, which has had mask mandates and lockdowns the whole fucking time. And I know that they've reopened quite a bit, but still, amusement parks and places where large gatherings happen tend to remain closed in a lot of these places. And the water park, I was in a traffic jam, and I drove by a water park, which I hadn't seen an amusement park or a water park open all over the country. I've been all over the country. They were all ghost towns and closed. Well, not only did I see the water park was open, which if they did allow the reopening, then so be it. The people weren't afraid to go. There was no masks or social distancing going on. There were people waiting in line to go down the slide and all that. And I don't know that you can't catch the virus if your head's above the water and you're breathing. So there's that. But lots of people, a lot of young people, obviously, but lots of people were enjoying themselves, having a nice time at the water park. And it was a huge water park. It wasn't a small one. We're talking Six Flags level of water park. Plenty of people. Not afraid, living their lives. Why? Because there's a 0.04% chance of dying. No more risk than anywhere else. So, and that's where I fall in. I know being out here, not wearing my mask, not social distancing, that I have a 0.04% chance of dying. So when you think about that in terms of risk, it's low. It's very low. And when you bounce it about, it's the fact that I'm a truck driver and I spend the majority of my time driving. It really boils down to I'm probably going to get killed in traffic. In fact, I could tell you I get endangered on a regular basis versus the chances of me getting the coof. So, there's that. So, and you got to ask yourself risk versus reward. But that is an individual decision, not something you impose on other people. There's been studies that show that masks increase anxiety, increase aggression. They're taking there's been psychological studies on this. And I can tell you when I go out now and everybody's masked up and the mandates in force and all of that, even if I wear my mask, I have increased social anxiety. As in, it's so uncomfortable that I don't want to be out there in public. In fact, I've spent many days inside this truck unwilling to subject myself to that. That has an effect on the economy as well. And we can see that, when I told you about a bunch of people being afraid of the virus and they're not going to do anything risky, usually because they think they're putting vulnerable individuals in danger. Now, going back to what I said, you have the ability to protect yourself if you choose to. You could wear a face shield, an N95 or better mask, and gloves. That does not involve anybody else. That is something that you can do to protect yourself and everyone around you, depending on how virtuous you are, from the virus. By virtue, protecting yourself from getting infected is protecting everyone around you. Do I think that's the way to go? No, I don't. We have immune systems. The best way to protect everybody is for the healthy individuals to go out, get the virus, get everything, have it run through us until we get herd immunity. And then the virus dies off and, you have occasional amount like the flu. It'd be just like the flu. That's what COVID's going to end up like the flu. It's still going to take people out. It's still going to be out there forever. We're going to have a vaccine for it. And it's going to be like the flu vaccine and about as effective as the flu vaccine, which is highly ineffective because viruses are constantly evolving. By the time you get a vaccine to market, the virus has probably already evolved to where they're making the vaccine largely ineffective. I haven't been flu vaccinated since I was in the military. We're talking 20 plus years now at this point. And other than that sickness in February, which could have been the flu as easily as it could be the coof, I don't get sick. I haven't had a problem. I haven't been hospitalized. I haven't gotten pneumonia. I haven't had any issues. So my immune system's pretty good. That's what that tells me. You know, and we're talking even during the unhealthy times, I didn't get sick very often. I got sick more often than I have since I've been keto and fasting. But, you know, it's a matter of risk. And I feel the risk is low enough. And it hasn't changed. The per capita death rate is still holding steady, and may even begin dropping again from the looks of things. You know, as our treatments improve, as our therapies improve, definitely it's having an effect. As far as the overwhelming of the medical system, there's no place overwhelmed. And even if one hospital gets overwhelmed, there's several counties around it that have hospitals that aren't, and they could easily transfer patients as needed to do that. So, you know, I'm trying to not be angry at the people that are criticizing my intelligence, that are criticizing my morality, and somehow are being self-righteous and morally superior to me, and trying to browbeat me into changing my stance on this, and it's just not going to happen. We are giving up way too much freedom, and we're not really getting anything in return in terms of infection rate. And in terms of death rate, that has very little to do with whether or not I wear a mask. That has to do with how are you treated when you go into the hospital with COVID-19. Not to mention, we don't know the I mean, if you look at the CDC death counts, which you can look up, by the way, you can see there's so many categories and numbers games going on there. It's hard to really figure out how many people actually died as a direct result of COVID-19. There's a lot of people dying from other things that are infected because it's a highly infectious disease that are being counted as COVID-19 related deaths. And this is done for financial reasons because hospitals get government subsidies based on a COVID-19 diagnosis, which is probably the biggest fucked up thing to do in a for-profit capitalistic medical system. Capitalism is fucking up our medical system. A lot of corruption and money has taken precedence over whether or not it heals you and I. It's something I've been saying for years in terms of nutrition and health, and it hasn't. In fact, I'd say it's worse. The corruption is worse now during COVID-19 than it ever has been. A lot of people are not letting this crisis go to waste. And we're going to continue to see companies taking advantage of COVID-19. And another thing we're seeing is the strangulation of small businesses in favor of large corporate interests. And that's going to destroy millions of jobs, millions of lives. It's going to be a lot of people on the streets. You know, I like van life, but I know I'm in the minority there. You know, not everybody wants to live in a vehicle or in a tent under an overpass. So maybe 0.04% risk is a risk worth taking for the survival of our way of life. The Constitution does not make exceptions for pandemics. There's nowhere in there. We are being manipulated by the media in terms of fear. I have noticed that since the economy GDP numbers came out, that the media has been reducing the amount of fear-mongering in terms of COVID, in terms of it's not popping up as much in my feed, whereas before it was all I saw. We're getting less of that and less of the civil unrest coverage, even though the civil unrest is still ongoing. But you have to dig instead of it being thrown in your face as often. I don't know. I don't sit and watch 24-hour news anymore, so what they're doing on there, they're probably still fucking with your fear buttons. But you keep in mind that if you're afraid, you're going to click. And that's their business model. That is why they're doing it. They're not trying to save your life. They're not trying to raise awareness. As long as you're afraid, you will click their clickbait titles in regards to your fear. Politics is a dumpster fire right now, and we've mixed it with this pandemic, and it's caused a level of division, and it's caused so much conflict. I've seen people lose friends over this. I believe I've lost a few acquaintances. I wouldn't call them friends. We don't hang out or do anything like that. But I've lost some people and I've also lost subscribers based solely on my stance about masks, and all for the virtue signaling reasons, which is why I got so angry and made that other video, because I've served my country for 10 years, giving up my freedom for those 10 years. You're not free when you're in the military. Your free speech is even regulated. You can't protest unless that's changed. Your finances are monitored in the military. You can't just go out and fuck up your finances, or you will get consequences for that. It's called financial irresponsibility, something I had a problem with while I was in back then. I made a lot of mistakes in my military career, and as a result, I got higher tenured out, which is an honorable discharge. It's just I wasn't getting promoted because I was fat. I was kind of always on the, I have problems with authority, obviously, and I was always kind of had one foot in the door being fucked with by my superiors. But I did my time of 10 years, and I joined the military. I come from a military family background, and I joined it because I wanted to do my part to preserve our freedom. I like freedom. I like knowing I can do what I want, go where I want, say what I want, and nobody can take that away from me. Well, lately, it's been taken away from me, which is why it's been the subject of a lot of my videos lately, that bothers me. It doesn't seem to bother some of you, particularly those of you who are afraid. And you don't understand, if you give an inch, you don't get that inch back. And they take a mile. Caving into the mask mandates, regardless of your fear, when, once again, you can protect yourself completely, but nobody's doing it. I see maybe 1 or 2 people wearing full PPE the whole entire time I've been out here. A lot of people are half-ass wearing their masks, or they pull them off at stupid times, and I'm just like, come on. It's the same thing with during lockdowns keeping Walmart open. It's pretty much stupid. It allows people to still spread it. You've essentially funneled everybody to one fucking store during the lockdown. I mean, all the stupid shit we've done during this. This is probably why we have the worst infection rate in the world, in the United States. But we don't have the worst death rate, which indicates, as another indicator to me, that it's all in how we treat the virus, how we are taking care of it in our medical system. And we're doing okay. We're not the best, but some states are better than others. I think 8 per capita in South Dakota, which has been open the whole time, is 8 deaths per 100,000. A lot of people like to play that. You got to understand, when you break it down per capita, it doesn't matter about population density necessarily. It matters per 100,000 people how many, and I've been to South Dakota. Density happens there. People are going to do a touristy shit. I've gone to casinos, no social distancing or masks for that matter in there. The only people I saw wearing a mask was one dude at the poker table I was sitting at. Restaurants, there's been full capacity restaurants, particularly in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, is where I came across that. Restaurant, full capacity, no plexiglass, no masks, none of that. Servers were still wearing masks, which I found intriguing. But the majority of people and they didn't care. And I was seated at the bar during that to eat my meal because they were so full I couldn't get a table. And I had people I didn't know sitting directly to my left and right while I was eating. And that's what's going on in South Dakota. Their per capita death rate is in the single digits. I believe it was 8 when I looked last, and still is. So people do die from COVID. It is a real disease. I'm not here to deny that. I'm here to say it's not any worse of a risk than any other thing that kills us. Be it the flu, be it car accidents, be it cancer, be it heart disease, be it stroke, be it, diabetes. Diabetes, you got more of a chance of dying from diabetes than you do from COVID, especially if you combine the two. So maybe we should take those steps to protect the vulnerable. Change our diets. My mother's back on keto, you'll be thankful to know. We'll see how she's doing with it because her blood sugar started to shoot up for her cheating on keto. Went up to the 150s. And I'm trying to say, hey, you got to be strict till you're back down in the 120s to 90s range, which is what she was doing before, when she was sticking to the diet and not fucking up. These are steps people can take with the vulnerable to make them less susceptible to dying. Yet, we're not doing any of that. We're not addressing health. I see so much unhealthy shit. Like the other day, I'm going down the highway and I swear I was doing like 68 miles an hour and a car had to be doing 85. Driver in the car by themselves wearing a mask. 85 miles an hour, blows past me. The traffic up there I was going with the flow at 68. The traffic up there wasn't going very fast. Everybody was going at a moderately good speed, but this car was doing 85, 90. Does a triple lane change while wearing a mask, no blinker, nothing, and weaves through, comes within inches of the car in front of them to squeeze in between. You have like a car forward and another car back here. He squeezed in between them and kept going along the way. He's going to get somebody killed or himself killed. Or he's going to cause an accident or run somebody off the road. He's wearing a mask. Why aren't we campaigning for that? Why aren't we shaming them? You want to know why we're not shaming them? Because damn near everybody fucking breaks rules on the road and drives aggressively. I have not ridden in a car with a person that I have not directly observed driving like a maniac. A lot of times I'm holding the fucking oh shit handle. And you can't tell them because then they get defensive. But it's hypocritical to levy some kind of moral superiority in a situation like that. You're afraid enough to wear a mask, but you're not afraid to endanger a bunch of lives by speeding, breaking fucking traffic rules, and doing all of that. So unless you live a completely safe, virtuous, OCD level life, you're not really any more virtuous than anyone else. No matter what cause you currently be or jumping. I mean, all of the activities that you would have to eliminate to protect those around you would include driving, would include drinking, smoking, would include flying, would include doing anything that could remotely endanger someone around you. And a lot of these things have a higher per capita death rate than COVID, by the way. You'd have to stop. If you're so virtuous and you want to protect everyone around you, then you got to pretty much live in a bubble, And if you're scared for yourself, standard American diet. I've been fighting the standard American diet for 5 years now online. And the same people that would virtue signal me about the mask are not necessarily following a healthy diet or encouraging their loved ones to do so. When you look at the amount of diabetes and the amount of obesity and overweightness here in the United States, those are all people that are going to fucking die if they don't change. You know, people that have browbeat me online, not in my YouTube, but in Facebook, I've had people browbeat me and act morally superior online, yet these same people would, you know, give me alcohol and fucking pizza at a party, you know, or baked goods and all of that stuff, with very little concern of the health of everyone around them that they're serving those things to. I'm sorry, but that is the same as infecting somebody with COVID and they die. You're giving people death. You know, one takes a little longer, I'll give you that, but the end result is the same, and the suffering is the same. So you can't be morally superior and half-ass it. You don't get to tell me that I'm a dick for wearing my mask when I've probably done more for other people's health, you know, from being on this channel than most people ever do in their lifetime for anyone. You know, I've gotten letters saying that I've been fucked up the whole time and you have saved me. I've gotten those letters. But now, because I've taken this stance on the side of freedom and on the side of truth, if you look at the data, this is data that you can look up and come to your own conclusion. You don't need it synthesized by some corrupt motherfucker who's going to manipulate the numbers. You know your chance of dying now. And you can go and look this up, your per capita death rate. That is your percentage chance, regardless of the rate of infection, regardless of any other number of dying of COVID, and then you can decide accordingly for yourself. What you're not allowed to do is make that decision for me or anyone else. And the more you do that, the more collateral damage will happen. The more our economy will collapse, the more people will be out of their home, the more of our suicide rate, which has climbed 600%. 600% increase in suicides from all of this. The higher that rate, you know, and I've even had a commenter say that they were considering that. And I said, don't do it. There's plenty of you know, opportunity. I myself have started over several times in my life. This person had hit rock bottom, lost their savings and done all of that, and is a trucker like me. And I was like, look, you know, start over. You know, nothing has really changed. You still have your job. You know, yes, you lost your nest egg, but start over. Just keep going. You'll be back to it before you know it. And I hope that person's all right. I don't want to call them out by the name, but they did comment this. And surprisingly, nobody else tried to let this, you know, you're not alone. If you're miserable with the way things are, you're not alone. That's the one thing it's the one thing that keeps me going, is I know I'm not alone. I've seen many of you comment. It's one of the reasons I've been talking about these things, is I want to know I'm not the only one thinking this way, because being the only one thinking this way sucks. When you feel like you end up being gaslit into just feeling like you're a crazy piece of shit. But knowing and seeing with my own eyes that I'm not alone, which I have in the past couple days since I made the very angry video, and also, you know, really just hearing it from people can help you through the tough times, especially when you're in an area that it's really bad. The lockdown's really bad, or the masking is really bad, or, you know, and everybody around you will pounce on you if you step outside their box. And it's hard to have your freedom in that. And I've talked to a few people that are really struggling with this, but nobody takes that into account. They're all like, you know, can't you just wear the mask and all of that? And it goes back to the anxiety issue and the depression issue, and the fact that it is a hindrance to us interacting with. We are social creatures, people. If we isolate ourselves and, you know, don't allow for that interaction, you will see a decline into depression and loneliness that when you take into account the economic damage and all of this other stuff can become overwhelming to people. And it's really important to prevent that. And the way to prevent that, in my opinion, I'm not, I'm just a dickhead in a truck. The way to prevent that is to allow masks to be voluntary, do not force anyone, and to protect ourselves from the virus, if that is your fear, but leave it up to people to decide their fate in terms of that. It is not our job to, make fun of, condemn people just because they don't want to wear a mask and they, whatever their reasoning may be. Sometimes their reasoning is political, sometimes their reasoning is they legit are uncomfortable and anxious or even claustrophobic in the mask. And for me, it's bringing back social anxiety. That's my problem with it. It's preventing me from wanting to go out amongst people. Not a huge problem because I can function as a solo individual, but sometimes it feels downright depressing, and spending large amounts of time in this box isn't something I'm a fan of, but I've been doing it simply because it's easier in here. I don't have to wear my mask in here. I don't have to deal with anybody. Is bullshit, But I would like to go back out into society again, and enjoy the company of friends or make new friends or just to be social in general. One of the reasons I like going to play poker in South Dakota is it's allowing social interaction and normalcy. Not that everybody that I play poker with is someone I want to be friends with, but at the very least, it's allowing that social interaction, because poker is also a game of interpreting, whether or not someone's fucking lying to you or bullshitting or whatever, and it's amusing in some ways, the way people act. I'm kind of always been a people watcher, which masks aren't a good thing for. And it made me feel normal. I don't have that anxiety in that setting. I don't. When I was in the casino, no social anxiety whatsoever. When I go into Walmart, social anxiety through the roof. So, what the fuck do I know anyway? I'm just a selfish prick who still doesn't want to wear a mask and will still talk about it in my videos. And I realize some of you are going to unsub for me from that. That's what, it is what it is. I'm not going to change my views on this ever. And I prefer freedom. And when every ounce of fucking freedom you give up for safety and security, you'll lose both. You got to understand that. You'll end up losing both. We're a free society. We have a constitution for a reason. Let's stick to it. As far as the constitutionality of it, freedom of expression, freedom to peaceably assemble has been destroyed by these lockdowns and rules and social distancing and masks. There's also freedom of having control of your own health and health care. So that's been way infringed upon between the masks and between taking away certain treatments from doctors by pretty much uneducated fucking politicians. So, it is what it is. I had to sit down and cool off before I made a video addressing this. I'll be back to New York here in another day or so, and starting my 2 weeks off. Part of that 2 weeks is going to be spent in New York visiting friends, camping, and doing all of that. But I'm also going to do a road trip to South Dakota and try and switch my residency, because despite an increased level of fear in South Dakota, I will say it's still the freest state in the Union. And I have a lot of fond memories, well, I have some bad memories too, in South Dakota, so I don't necessarily mind having that on my license plate and having that in my fucking license. And not paying state taxes, because there's, no income tax in South Dakota, so there's that. So it's a financial boon too. And very easy to become a resident, so I'm gonna fucking do it. I have no reason or no loyalty to New York State at this point, just because I've seen, Cuomo has played his cards So is a lot of the other local governments. And I don't know that my tax revenue needs to support that government anymore. I'm sorry, but, you know, and not to mention the level of compliance and virtue signaling from the general population in New York is a lot higher. And so the tribalism is pretty bad in New York, in my opinion, and less tolerance for people like me who don't fit in those boxes. And, you know, as a libertarian. And I only say libertarian because I think that's the closest in the political spectrum I fall to being categorized. Because I have things that one could view as liberal, particularly my anti-corporation stuff, but lately a lot of the left is been corrupted by that. And, you know, but I also want low government, you know, minimize the government's control on things, which I think the conservatives have caved in on over the years, but they used to be the party of that shit. So that's my political affiliation, and I don't fit in with the far left or the far right or any of the extremes for sure. You know, and in the meantime, I'm in. If I were to classify myself as that political party, my vote probably would never count until we get away from this two-party divided tribalist horse shit that we're in. But that being said, my reason for not wearing a mask is they don't fucking work. The risk of death is low, not only for me, but anybody I come in contact with. And, you know, I prefer the freedom that I worked hard for 10 years of my life to defend, and another 15 years driving this truck to support our way of life. You know, and even though I step outside our way of life in terms of minimalism, I still understand the need of consumption to maintain a free society. Because if you take that away, there's only one option in terms of how we live, and it's not a free society at that point. I don't want to see the United States become a socialist or communist country. Because if you look around the world at other governments that are doing that, I see a shit show of misery and poverty. So, that's it. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit. And to those of you who, you know, aren't satisfied with that, my message isn't going anywhere. You'll even hear me comment on it during adventure videos. So if you can't stand it, feel free to not watch. But if you do like my shit, hit like, subscribe, hit the bell. And that way, when I do live streams, you'll be notified. Also, head to ScottTheTruckDriver.com, sign up for my free email list so that when I do LBRY exclusives or other live streams on other platforms, which I'm overdue for one on dlive, you will get the notification and we can continue to hang out together and have fun. Please also follow me on LBRY. There will be one LBRY exclusive podcast style video per week. I am debating. Tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments if you would enjoy an audio only podcast instead of the video format podcast. They'll still be about 2 hours long when I do them. But some people may find it easier to consume an audio podcast 2 hours long than a video one. And, you know, it's a lot easier on the downloads for LBRY and stuff. Like, it'll just start playing and leave whatever picture I put up on there. So it would make it a little easier to consume. But at the same time, some people like to see my facial expressions and reactions when I'm podcasting. So there's that, or whatever things I want to show you as well. So let me know in the comments what kind of podcast you would prefer. Have a nice motherfucking day and shit. This is my last day as a free human being. I'm about to go to New York, People's Republic of New York, where I'll have to wear a mask to do anything at all. Because if I don't put my mask on, oh my God, the lynch mob will be on my ass. They'll report me to Cuomo. I'll get a fine, and You know, and they'll probably enforce it there, you know. Hopefully I don't have to wear a mask in the woods. If I have to wear a mask in the woods, I'll never go back to New York. You know, New York will see me once a year. So you better not fuck that up, Cuomo. Motherfucking piece of shit. Fucking Cuomo. Fuck you, Cuomo. Fuck you. And everybody that lets you do this. Fuck all of you. Not all of you, but all of you that made it possible for Cuomo to become a fucking dictator. Fucking piece of shit.